Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar titled DX During and Beyond the Pandemic, hosted in partnership with GBM Qatar. My name is Dareen Abougaida from Al Jazeera English, and I'll be the moderator with you over the next 60 minutes. So I'd like to welcome all our panelists and also to all our viewers, wherever in the world you are watching us from. Let me just give you a brief introduction on today's topic before introducing our speakers. So we've recently seen the discussion around digital transformation take on a new urgency. While it's really been on the horizon for organizations for a number of years, COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, has really accelerated that timeline, and particularly here in Qatar. So it's one of the countries that has seen rapid digitization on several fronts since the onset of the pandemic earlier this year. So what we'll do in this webinar is we're going to look at just how much digital transformation has recently accelerated in the region and how it's also mitigated the ongoing situation. Also, how are companies able to bounce back in terms of efficiency and accessibility? And we'll also try and zero in on how the Qatari government itself has promoted digitization and whether they were able to create new opportunities for the community here. So just in a nutshell, then, today's webinar will be about the lessons learned, it'll be about the successes, and it'll also be about the challenges when it comes to digital transformation. Let me now bring in our panelists. We have with us today Mr. Hassan El-Sayed. He's the Assistant Undersecretary for the Information Technology at the Ministry of Transport and Communications. He also leads the government-wide ICT initiatives to achieve the strategic objectives of the National E-Government Strategy that, by the way, is the Qatar Digital Government 2020 strategy. Mr. El-Sayed's experience spans more than 25 years in the field of information technology. Also with us today is Mr. Subhi Shabib. He's the General Manager of GBM Qatar, and he's responsible for all business operations and growth of the company. He's developed the operation to become one of the leading and trusted solution providers in the country. And he took that position in 2012, prior to which he was GBM's director for IBM Systems. And he was also very instrumental in strengthening the partnership between IBM and GBM to provide leading IT solutions to clients in the market. We also have Mr. Majdi Al-Khatir, who is the General Manager for IBM in Qatar. He's directly responsible for sectors where IBM's hybrid multi-cloud and AI vision is implemented for key clients in the country. He leads a team of consultants and sales advisors across all the vertical segments when it comes to IBM in Qatar. Happy to have Mr. Richard Story with us as well. He's the acting chief of ICT, Information Communications Technology, at the Hamad Medical Corporation. And Mr. Story's previous experience spans 14 years in London at the Guy and St. Thomas's Hospital as the chief enterprise architect. And last but definitely not least, we have with us Mr. Mashhoor Salhab, who's the CIO of Doha Bank. And his previous experience spans 8 years with the bank itself. And also he used to be with Q Invest Bank. So thank you very much for all of your time. It's good to have you with us, and it's good to tap into your own experiences when it comes to digital transformation in Qatar. Mr. Sayed, I'll start off with you. Let me ask you this. Being the lead, as I mentioned in my introduction, for government-wide ICT initiatives, how did you support other government entities to continue their work during COVID digitally? And how is that experience then shaping the way how they will operate in the future?
Yeah, well, I think as everybody have seen, ICT has helped the economies and governments to get over the impact. I wouldn't say we haven't got any zero impact, but definitely with the use of ICT, it has we have overcome many of the issues. Now, this infrastructure that we have here in Qatar has been built over throughout the year. Many efforts we have made in the Ministry of Transport and Communication, and previously in ICT Qatar, the Supreme Council of ICT, for the day to come. So a situation like this pandemic has did not make so much, a negative impact. So MOTC role, I'll give you maybe in a nutshell. What we do is we help the government digitize and do e-transformation. As part of this also, we offer some shared ICT shared services. I can mention some of these shared services.
Sure.
The government network is an infrastructure that we have built to connect all the government entities together. We have around 120 sites today that are connected together. The data centers. So basically, we have established a common data center for all of these mission critical systems to be hosted. We have a government data exchange, so a platform to exchange data among the different government entities. So basically, these are the components that we have helped the government overcome the pandemic. Now, this is for government to other governments, but also for government employees. So, as you guys may be aware, that we have to move most of our systems into a cloud-based platform. So Microsoft Office 365, which we have encouraged the government to use maybe for the past 2 years, has come with a lot of collaboration and virtual meeting kind of functionalities that are being used today for for government employees to work remotely. Students as well, maybe you have seen a lot of schools have been shut for some time. Many of them they have been studying from home, so we had to increase the bandwidth of the internet to support all of this remote working. The public, which is the very important, I think, constituents who are the beneficiary of those governments. Many of these services have gone online. We have a call center that have received so many calls, especially for health as well as for education. We had to expand the government call center as well for that reason.
You mentioned the public, which I'm going to ask you how the public received all of this, but in just a little moment, let me now turn to Mr. Subhi Shabib. So we heard from Mr. Hassan Al Sayed that the government seems to be really backing up the digital agenda. So Mr. Shabib, how crucial do you think these initiatives are from the government to implement a culture of transformation and resilience? And how do you see collaborations with the government to help speed up digital transformation to achieve Qatar's vision from your vantage point?
Well, I think the COVID-19 pandemic was a devastating cause, and caused a major disruption to the world. And certainly the impact our way of life and the way we communicate and the way we interact. But reality, I need to tell you that we started the first e-government project, early 2000 with the government. So the government of Qatar has very early on realized that the value of e-transaction away from those, nobody expected to have this pandemic, but to tell you the truth, the transformation, the move toward digital transformation has started way long time ago. And certainly we had the privilege to develop the first 12 e-services for the country, and Qatar won the WSIS, which is the World Summit for Information System. And the journey continued since then. And, as Mr. Hassan mentioned, the ICT Qatar, and then later the MOTC, and other ministries and other organizations, whether it be Hamad or the other financial institution, embarked on this journey of transformation. So reality, when this pandemic came, certainly was a major disruption to our way of life and continue. But many of those e-services continue to be provided And we are very lucky with many of those services. For instance, Ministry of Interior, which are available 24/7, whether mobile or on the web. So these are not only available for individuals, but also for companies and for SMEs to participate and do their services more efficiently and more cost effective. So the journey continued. As Mr. Hassan, the GDX was one of the key projects to consume data and to consume services between that coming from one entity or multiple entities to provide an integrated and smart e-services. So the journey started a while ago. It's really it did pick up speed afterwards, and certainly during the pandemic, it's just we managed to reap the benefit of what has been put in the past.
So how do you see GBM supporting its clients here in Qatar going forward and bringing the right technology in at the right time, which is perhaps the most important thing?
Oh, absolutely. I think bringing the right technology at the right time is one thing, but I believe understanding the client imperative and understanding their objective is equally important, because these are at the end what you need to bring in need to fit the purpose and to deliver on those objectives that the client wish to do. So we spend a company need to invest its time and effort and skills and have those capability and have those strategic relationship to bring in the industry leading solution. And we have, through our strategic partnership with IBM since 31 years, we are bringing in much of those know-how and knowledge and those capability to this market, supported by a large team of people that we spend every year a couple of $1 million in increasing our capability and skills to serve this market. So the right technology and the right time is certainly one dimension, but there are actually many dimensions to these, whether that's in terms of capability on the ground, having those local team in Qatar, whether the pandemic happened or before that with the blockade, has helped us to continue our operation and serving those clients regardless of what are the events. I hope I answered the question.
You did. Very interesting. Thank you. So just to pick up on what you were saying, Mr. Majdi Al-Khater, let me bring you in here, because let's look at the issue of the simplification of technology. We understand that was very imperative under the digital transformation drive. So how did IBM specifically assist the Qatari companies in achieving that goal? And what were some of the integration challenges that you faced?
Sure. Thank you, Doreen. Definitely, I mean, the integration and simplification of IT is not new. And as my colleagues on the panel mentioned, Qatar has been really aggressive around the digital transformation from the beginning, even before the pandemic hit. What I think ended up, as mentioned, was the utilization of the IT assets and the investments made really became very, very visible and really became the differentiator to keep the business running. In our survey of our clients in the past 6 months, IBM conducted around Europe, Middle East, and Africa, nearly all of them mentioned, number one, what they wanted was survivability of the business and resiliency for the workforce. And number two, they wanted simplification of IT, because the complexity around IT really is a hindrance when you fully depend on IT services and your employees need to interact, your supply chain needs to interact with those services, becomes a really hindrance to the business. So simplification of IT through integration is definitely number two in terms of priority, because number one is the safety of the workforce. Making sure that IT delivers on its promise became more visible. And I would say what changed in our integration landscape is it became more priority to the C-level executives and organizations. When previously it was something they had to do, now it's become complete necessity that they need to achieve that integration and delivery of the service. The challenges we face, I mean, as Subhi mentioned and so on, and Hassan before, is if you don't have the right skills in place, it really becomes difficult to maintain and to run those systems or to run those investments themselves. So what we had to do was really to look at the remote areas of working. Overnight, we had to make sure that consultants were able to deliver remotely, and you needed that secure infrastructure to enable that remote work. And number two, we needed a roadmap, different roadmap, where individuals in organizations were going to take the reins and control fully and depend on themselves. So I think those two areas were really key for us in moving forward on integration. And simplification will remain for the near term, because we see that is really the way that flexibility achieved by the organization and agility is going to happen through simplification of the services.
Okay, so it sounds to me like you really had to adapt because it was such uncertain times. But look ahead for us for just a moment. So how can entity-wide digital transformation actually help in establishing resilient organizations in future times of uncertainty?
Definitely. I think being resilient has a two-pronged meaning. One is resilient in terms of the business, meaning sure that you achieve your business objectives. Second, the resiliency from an IT or operations perspective is keeping the lights running and keeping the operations side of those services running. So for us, from a business perspective, agility in terms of analytics, having access to the right information to make better informed decisions becomes a priority. Because overnight, I mean, we've had companies that had to revisit their supply chains, their commodity of items they used to purchase have been disrupted. Many things were delayed. And the business was really disrupted, and they needed to make different decisions quickly. And they needed information and data points to make those decisions. The other side is on the resiliency from an operations perspective. As Mr. Hassan mentioned, the country is driving towards a cloud-first strategy. Having choice for clients to choose their cloud providers, providing them different options on how to move in a hybrid cloud model is really, really key. And I think the more choice we give the clients, the more flexibility they will have and the more resilient they will become.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Richard Story, let me bring you in here. I think if we say that the most critical sector during the coronavirus pandemic was healthcare is an understatement, right? So tell us more about your particular experience. How prepared was Hamad Medical Corporation in handling this pandemic that threw everybody off guard? And how were your teams supporting hospital operations during it?
From a perspective of the information communication technology, we were remarkably well prepared. Largely because I've insisted that my staff constantly scan the horizon. In December, I went to Kathmandu. But before I went, I told my leaders that when I returned, they must have their plans, including exit plans, in place and ready to go. The scenario effectively kicked off in March, and our plans just happened. So we had to move from a baseline of 2,500 beds to a baseline of 41,000 beds. Each bed has to be digitized, which meant we had to reconfigure our entire 2,500 portfolio of IT systems. We achieved all of that, and we achieved all of that within about 10 days. So it's not necessarily about the technology. We had the technology. In fact, we had lots of technology, and with the support of MOTC, Ministry of Transport and Communication, we knew where we were going. What we had to do, or what I had to do, was to ensure that the people were identified and focused on the job that they had to do in hand. And of course, my people, like the nurses and like the doctors, had to go work on the front line. So we had to teach them how to put on protective equipment. We had to teach them how to function within a ward environment where these critically ill patients were. So it wasn't so much about the technology. We had lots of technology, and we brought that all to bear and enabled all of that. We then reached out to our colleagues in various ministries for assistance and guidance. If the expression is what was the most innovative thing we did, frankly, the most innovative thing we did was to create a partnership with Qatar Post in order that we could deliver medications to patients at their homes. Now that required a little bit of technology adjustment, but
how
most
so?
We just had to inject or integrate a billing module into our system, which we did. It took a couple of days. We did that, and that then allowed us to engage with Qatar Post, who would turn up at our pharmacies, collect the drugs, and take them out to the patients in their own homes. That's a huge change for Qatar, which we'd never done it before. And frankly, it's only done on a very small scale in the UK because it's based on local pharmacies. Here it was a major hospital taking over the management and delivery of drugs. That was one of probably the biggest and most innovative piece that we did. But from an IT perspective, it was a very small piece.
So is that how the HMC sort of managed to ensure that the community didn't feel like there were major changes, that the community wasn't affected in general, and that your operations were up and running smoothly and virtually?
Yeah, we moved from face-to-face to virtual almost overnight. And bear in mind, the community knew the problems that were happening, and so they were bought into it. We didn't have to sell anything to them. And that just took place. The challenge is not so much in the delivery of the technology and modern sophisticated technology. That was the easy part. The difficult part, from my perspective, is going forward, how do I create stickiness out of that to ensure that that change continues on into the future? And that has problems at a practical level from a team-based approach. So doctors work in teams, for example, and you have the most junior doctor in that team to the most senior doctor. And they're used to working in partnership. So the junior doctor is learning from the seniors and so forth. Put collaboration in there, you break that apart. So we need a new model that looks at how's collaboration going to assist in the new way of working. Because the way we used it is probably the wrong approach, because it effectively divides everybody up into sitting in front of a laptop. That's not how doctors and nurses work. They work very differently. So what we do in the future is going to be an interesting question, and that's a communication, a discussion we need to take place with the Ministry of Transport and Communication and various other ministries. How do we take the technology we've got and actually use it in a very different way? We used it in a very specific and a very controlled way within the pandemic, but that wasn't challenging.
Okay.
Because we had our plans and we were ready to roll. It's tomorrow is my challenge rather than what we did yesterday.
Yeah, okay. We'll come back to tomorrow's challenge in a moment. Let's just get the point of view of Mashhour Salhab. Mr. Salhab, thanks for your time. So talk us through the banking industry, and while embarking on this journey of digital transformation, how did Doha Bank meet the changing banking trends, and how did this adoption of new technology make up for the customer's own expectations and the customer's evolving digital expectations?
So probably for Doha Bank and for digital transformation, and coincidentally, and maybe Mr. Said knows, and Mr. Sobhi, we have last year we have an initiative with IBQ, which is we merge in one bank, and that may be coincident with the same of the pandemic problem, and before and during this merger activities. We worked hard, to minimize and facilitate the banking services for the customers. One of the examples, which is our omni-channel program, and we work hard in this program with thank you for GBM also to help us in this program. We partnership with them, and we delivered one of the best omni-channel or mobile banking solution for the customers. So that was one of our maybe challenges, and this is also part of our maybe what you call it customer research, or about their needs, what the customer needs and what the customer is looking for, and this is maybe one of the things which we're working on, which is the omni-channel for the customers.
Okay, fine, thank you, Mr. Sayed. Then back to you for. Perhaps you want to just add on to us what Mr. Mashhour just had to say. And also, when you spoke to us earlier on, you sort of touched upon the Qatari community and the services that were introduced to the community. So I wonder if you can just speak to the experience of the Qatar Republic, and once you introduced digital services to the community, what was that reception like? Was there a challenge there?
Well, I think this applies for both government as well as the private sector. I think COVID-19 wasn't all bad, you know. At least it helped, you know, the e-transformation go faster. I think the new normal has made people more receptive to work differently. That's talking about government employees and professionals, so working virtually. For people living in Qatar to be more adapting to e-commerce for their day-to-day business. So I think yes, we had you know the challenges we had in the past has been overcome with some of these have been overcome with COVID-19, but here in Qatar, the community, you know, people are generally ICT literate, so I think they appreciate the convenience of the digital services which can bring to them, and they have found it. We didn't have it find it very hard to convince people to use the digital services. Even students, you know, to have them work from home, study from home, so it wasn't that hard. Actually, people are becoming more demanding of those services, which is a good.
What do you mean by that? How so?
So I would say people are more demanding. They want more services online, even the things that they use to counter, for example, or they have to commute for. Now they want even more and more. I would say it's a good problem to have for both. Yeah. But at the same time, we know Qatar has a lot of migrant workers, blue collars as well. So what the government did, we have identified or built a specialized portal for those communities because they have their own needs, same wise as for people with disabilities. So we have specialized portals that we have built for those group of population. So basically, I mean, the digital transformation has gone on, but it went in a faster pace, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Mr. Shabib, on the issue of transformation and the pace of it. Now, we know that small, medium enterprises obviously are an integral part of the economy. So in your opinion, how important do you think it is for them to get on that transformation journey and to scale up their digital infrastructure?
I think the SME are an integral part of any economy, and they need to be, you know, brought in as part of any transformation, whether that's a government or that major organization. And certainly the SMEs today are participating in consuming their services, whether these are financial services or government services. Now it becomes for them to offer their own services, online and providing those digital transformation. Of course, it has to be compelling for them to embark on this journey. And in reality, there are a number of programs that have been put in place where these are the incubation center or the Qatar Science Technology Park or what the Qatar University is doing. And different companies are participating in these in these enablement program. Basically, there's three dimensions. There's the web presence, there's the e-services, the e-commerce, and the cloud services. And certainly, on the number of those initiatives are in place. We are participating on one initiative with the government in providing over 20,000 of ERP, services to companies, to 20,000 companies, so they embark on this transformation and facilitate their engagement on this digital transformation and their engagement with government services and other services. One comment I would like to put on these, this what Richard mentioned on the transformation with the pharmacy, I found it impressive, really, Richard. I end up using this, and honestly, I went and told so many of my friends around the world. I told them I have experienced something which I have never expected anywhere else, and not only the way it was delivered, but even the whole engagement process. You know, even how they interact with me over WhatsApp and how they get my address. So in a way, what I see, Dareen, is this. In different aspects of the industry and how it affected us, whether that in the financial services or that in the government services or that in the medical services. I see this, COVID-19 pandemic and crisis was like, I hope, just a mild heart attack, for that it's like with a promise of a lifestyle change, that we're going to do. And I believe this what you are mentioning about the stick and the stretcher. Certainly, it had opened the eyes of not only the government, but also on the board, in the boardroom and in the executive leadership of countries, that these are digital transformation is not something nice to have. It's not only a question of saving costs, but it's about raison d'etre. It's about resiliency. It's about continuation. It's about a strategic, interest, whether that's the backup of the data or that's the availability of the services. So the SME, I would come back to your question, since they are integral part of the economy, it's important to bring them in, but important to put the program in place to encourage them to get in. And we are engaged on a number of these programs to do so, but certainly it's not done. It is a long way. As you know, the COVID-19 really complicated life for the SME.
Yeah, it sure did. Mr. Mashhour, weigh in on the issue of SME for me. How has Doha Bank itself facilitated SMEs and entrepreneurs under the region's digitization drive? And how do you think that businesses then can contribute towards the goal of Qatar going forward?
Yes, actually, in Doha Bank, we have recently we have a kind of partnership with the Qatar FinTech Hub. Qatar FinTech Hub is it's a hub where we have a lot of Qataris companies with some FinTech ideas, something which is on production, something which is still under development. And we partnership with those guys, and we have maybe a couple of workshops maybe in the past, maybe a month back or so. And we were the sponsor of those companies. And now we are in the process of maybe helping some companies to maybe adopt their ideas, customize it, try maybe to find a way to implement this in the financial sector. And we will support them either by contracting with them or maybe buy their services. Back to the SMEs, challenges. Mainly during the pandemic, we have an aggressive program because it was something sudden. At the same time, we have, as I mentioned earlier, our mergers with the other bank maybe brought our attention, a lot of digitalization and digital transformation, and to be ready for such maybe similar situation. Because in the merger situation, we have to maybe digitalize a lot of services, minimize the services, and a lot of combination. So back to the SMEs, immediately after the pandemic, after the problem, we try to give them facilitate remote services for them, working from home, and for all other services related to this one.
What about any constraints that Doha Bank might have felt while trying to advance towards financial technology, fintech?
The main challenges here is mainly sometimes we have to, because the financial services is maybe a bit different than maybe the other services, like maybe healthcare or maybe other services. We have to take we have to align with the regulator, which is QCB. So one of the challenges we have, which is we have to maybe work with them closely. We have to maybe make sure all our services and products are certified and approved by them. So this is one of the major things which is we have in our financial services. But now, to be honest with you, the QCB or the Qatar Central Bank they are working also in an aggressive and a very ambitious, like, a program for digitalization. And we are aligned with them in many digitalization projects, and working close to them, like, to maybe facilitate, and especially in the payment gateway, because, most of the digitalization or digital transformation, it will be reflected and will be translated to a payment methodology. So we're working with them in a new payment methodologies, like, as you noticed, like, QR code payments, like, all this, touchless, contactless payments, etc. Because this is a part of the, like, the pandemic, like, results. So it is challenging, and it's working fine also at the same time.
Okay, Mr. Story, so you were speaking to us about Hamad Medical Corporation, some of the changes there that took place, but we also know that remote diagnosis has really seen a massive growth during the lockdowns and, during this time of the pandemic. So how do you see this particular trend continuing in a post-pandemic era?
All right, we refer to that as point of care testing, which is a remote diagnostic model. I'm just going to disabuse you of the fact that this is something new. Remote diagnostics has been around for over 40 years. Admittedly, in the old days, back in the 1970s, you had to wear a rucksack with a battery on it and with an electrocardiogram sensors on your chest, and then you walked around the hospital, and the data was then downloaded via the old-fashioned modem, basically a telephone into a coupler, and that was point-of-care testing, that was remote diagnostics. Admittedly, I always found it a challenge why the patients were still with us after that activity, but everything got smaller over the years. And so now we've got is the ability to do things in a moment's notice. And is point-of-care testing expanding within healthcare? Absolutely. Our problem is, how do I manage the devices? But that's a different argument. It's point-of-care testing is part and parcel of the armory of the clinician today. That will, as we move forward and new technologies come in, will increase and be enhanced. So we don't necessarily see that as a challenge to healthcare. That's really is a continual development, a continual life cycle of what has been going on since certainly the 1970s. That technology.
I suppose the question of the challenge comes from. Whether the, the past sort of 9 months, all industries, including yours, were kind of thrust into a whole new situation. So, is the market now geared and ready to go ahead with that continuation?
The only challenge we have with the market is that the diagnostic equipment, the pulse oximeter that you stick on the end of your finger, has it got an appropriate regulatory standard applied to it, so that I can go to Khulud, for example, and buy an FDA approved or Qatar DA approved pulse oximeter? That's the only challenge we have, and that covers all of the things you would expect within any technology device. Has it got security within it? Does it meet the clinical standards that are appropriate for utilizing that kind of device? So those are the things that we are concerned about, not necessarily the device itself. We know the device works, but I have to give my clinician, I have to give my doctor a device that I'm saying to him that every time you use it, it will give you exactly the same result every time. And that if you are integrating that using wireless or 5G, that the information will pass across that wireless environment without interference, or if it is interfered, that it has checks and balances in to ensure the integrity of the data as it moves across. So yes, my piece is more about how do I have a standardized approach to the technology, not necessarily about the technology itself. The technology is all there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. Mr. Majdi Al-Khater, let's look at IBM here for a moment. And from your experience as the general manager of IBM, how did the company enable Qatari companies to be able to move ahead with the digitization during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, and it looks like this will be the norm going forward, I mean, there's a huge focus around security for us,
Okay.
and the trust around what IT delivers is becoming more foundational, as we just discussed with all the gentlemen on the call. But the security and the way moving forward and the security posture of everybody is being looked at more strategically now. And I think that is a highlighted priority for us as IBM. What we deliver in the country, there is a change of mindset. Previously, if you asked me a year ago, people were not accepting the fact that security analysts were sitting halfway across the globe looking at their logs and faults and potential threats. Right now, they are asking us to come and please bring your best minds in the world to look at our faults and logs and monitor us 24/7. And we've seen an uptake in very mission critical infrastructure companies in the energy sector, for example, who have opened with IBM a global reach to look at their logs and their security posture. We're seeing this even from a small to medium enterprises, from retailers, as they have moved more online services. The threats have increased, the phishing attacks have increased, the individuals who are more exposed now to those type of attacks have increased, which mandates for them to put better security postures in place. If you ask me what is IBM's role now and moving forward, it's going to be bringing more of those thought leadership, emerging technologies around security, how AI helps in security posture into the more limelight in the Qatari market.
And I suppose you have your eye on the ball of 2030 then, that's the national vision.
Absolutely.
So how does this all, how does this all fit into that strategy and that future for Qatar?
And coming back to that national vision, I mean, I've been in the country for almost 8 years now. I've also been educated here under Qatar Foundation in my MBA. And I'm a big proponent of the skills, because if we do not have the future skills, we have a lot of technology. There's no shortage of kit or equipment or best features, but it's really the asset is in the people. Who are those leaders of the future that are going to take this forward? This year, I'm proud to say we hired 2 local female enterprise architects in our company as a first. And these individuals will spend 1 year with us, working with us. And maybe, Richard, you're going to take one of them on board, yeah?
I will take them both if you offer them.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's so hard to get people, particularly Qataris. If you've got a Qatari and she wants to come and work for me, even if it's only for 3 months, please, I'll take her.
I tell you, the way they are going, I think they're going to work in the lab somewhere globally.
Yeah.
Anyway, the motivation is there. The skills is the #1 priority. And I think the more we can do in the local economy from skills enablement, partnership with the university, with HBKU, Qatar University, giving them these programs, these assets to use in their education is really key, and a good ground for us to hire such talent into our company.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I just interject there and just touch on the concept of security there, and it's just a little tale. We were 5 days into the incident, and I was called out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to be met with a group of people who were looking very, very scared. We were at that point being subjected to a highly aggressive attack on our core information systems. And we immediately reached out to international players and literally pleaded for assistance. And the world came to our assistance. You know, this global pandemic is not just to do with people in Qatar, it's to do with people who are out there across the world helping us. And let's not forget that. That was probably the scariest time I've ever had, sitting here looking at this, trying to look after our patients, trying to look after our doctors and our nurses, and there's some evil human being out there who decides it's a great idea to try and take this hospital down, the Hamel Medical Corporation down. Fortunately, they didn't, and that was thanks to the help of major players like Microsoft, like IBM, like other local players, and MOTC. Must never forget MOTC because they're always there for us. So security, yes, is of critical importance to us. We have to look after ourselves, and we have to nurture our own talent whilst utilizing the skills of people from across the globe.
I suppose this is an issue that extends across the board. Mr. Sayed, I'll come to you. Is this something that you also are very concerned about, the issue of security. And in your opinion, looking ahead, how ready do you think the government is to tackle a similar crisis to COVID-19? Hopefully there won't be another one, but how ready is the government to?
Well, COVID-19 came unplanned, unprecedented, impacted the globe. So the governments had to react very quickly and react in the right way. So some of these things that have been mentioned by the gentleman about the security, allowing people work from home, allowing support team, also the third party, also companies to access the data from outside. All of this has made agencies to put all these security controls. So we learned, I would say, yes, in the beginning, we had to take some time to make sure that we put all the controls, security controls in place. But I guess going forward, hopefully we don't get a similar crisis in the future. But
hopefully, yeah.
We learned the hard way, and I think we have a lot of experience by now. Many of these steps that we have taken already, it will not be reverted without the security, the use of the cloud, the services that have the premium services that HMC and education and other government are offering. It will continue. So I think many of these will continue to be there in the future to ensure resiliency of the government.
We're just going to have to wrap up in a few moments or so, but Mr. Shabib, the final question too, if you don't mind. Mr. Sayed was just referring to the cloud. So in your opinion, how should businesses chart their cloud journey to effectively develop digital transformation strategies and enhance their competitiveness in a post-COVID-19 era? Now, let's look ahead. Let's forget about the pandemic, but look ahead and what we can learn from the future.
Darine, in short, to provide the answer on this, to reap the right benefit from journey to cloud, it needs to be part of the overall digital transformation plan. People jumped into the cloud in so many different ways, whether that use it for infrastructure or for data availability for different aspects. But it needs to be overall thought of, from an overall transformation plan, digital transformation plan, whether taking the dimension of security, taking the dimension of the different services, because many people look at the cloud as infrastructure, but really the fact is that so much of the AI, services available, robotic services, machine learning, and so many e-services available. And certainly when we're adopting a multi-cloud strategy, having those, you can enrich the experience and provide the customer always with the choice to provide a better and more richer experience in this journey.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this session. So on that, we'll wrap it up. It's been really very, very insightful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and views on your specific businesses and industries. I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And thank you as well to Forbes Middle East for organizing this panel today, and our exclusive partners at GBM Qatar. I appreciate everyone's time. Big thank you to all our viewers for joining us this afternoon and for watching. And thanks very much. Bye-bye.